Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
Or am I Trish and are you Mike? Because today is April Fool's Day.
I hate April Fool's Day. Did you grow up doing a lot of pranks, Mike?
Me?
Yeah.
Prankster?
Did you like doing pranks?
Do I seem like the kind of
Yes,
person
yes, you do.
that would cause people grief with
Unnecessarily?
my shenanigans? Never would I do that. No, my thing with April Fool's Day is I like the idea of it. It's fun to be wacky and goofy, but just so many pranks are either just not done well that they don't. I don't know. Like,
or there can be a lack of sensitivity with certain subject matters, I feel.
Yeah, and you want to be respectful of certain boundaries when it comes to things, but I just like with April Fool's Day, I don't know, I'd rather like fool you on October 10th or something. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm gonna mark that in my calendar now. Watch out for Mike's tomfoolery.
There you go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather just pull a random funny on you at some other point. Because they're kind of predictable if everybody knows that this is the day for it. I mean, I like how some companies will put out like maybe a fake press release or something. Like, I don't know, Oreos.
Those are humorous.
Yeah, like say Oreo is going to come out with like a tuna flavored Oreo or something. Right. You know, like that's kind of funny. I don't know. How about you?
Please, Oreo, don't come out with a tuna flavored cookie.
No. But Nabisco, if you're listening, those like strawberry milkshake Oreos that y'all had probably 10 years ago, bring those back. It was like
again, being Canadian, I don't think we got them.
Probably not, and nobody here remembers them. They were like one of the first gimmicky flavors that they did, because like that's Oreo's thing now. Is like practically every month there's some new gimmick flavor that they have. They were really good.
Nothing beats just the regular like double stuff though. That's the best Oreo.
I go for Mega. Do they have Mega stuff in Canada?
There's a Mega? I don't know if I've seen a Mega stuffed Oreo.
Oh, Mega stuff. Mega stuff is basically like 2 double stuffs. So next time you have
so much stuffing.
That's the whole point. So like next time you get some double stuffs, take like 2 cookies off, and then take the 2 with the cream on them and stick them together, and
home make them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, do you know the history of April Fools, Mike?
Are you going to tell me the truth, or are you going to tell me like a joke version? I mean, you're going to tell me that it was,
I'm going to tell you the truth based on the History Channel.
Okay. So she found it on the internet, folks. It must be true.
It's got to be true. The History Channel wouldn't lie to me, would they? So some historians speculate that April Fool's Day dates back to 1582, when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, called for by the Council of Trent in 1563, which we've talked about calendars on our show before. So people who, just didn't get the memo, failed to recognize that the start of the new year had moved to January 1st, and they continued to celebrate it during the last week of March through April 1st. And then April 1st kind of became the day of jokes and hoaxes as these people caught up to the change in the calendar. Some of these pranks included having a paper fish placed on your back and being referred to as a poisson d'avril. Sorry if my French is terrible.
Better than mine.
I stopped taking it back in grade 10. Or April fish is the translation in English. And it was said to symbolize a young, quote unquote, easily hooked fish and gullible person. So then, of course, it's going to spread through Europe. And then as Europeans come to North America, they're going to bring their traditions here. And now we're talking about it today.
Yes. And it is actually an officially recognized holiday in the Ukraine.
Really? They have the whole day off?
Apparently so. They have large festivals and parades in the city, and they dress up city monuments in funny clothes, particularly in the city of Humorina. And I may or may not be pronouncing that right. So I find the humor that a city named Humorina.
Capitalizing on April Fools.
Where they have the annual Festival of Humor since 1973.
I like that. Time to add another bucket list item.
Yes.
Ukraine would be pretty. We have a lot of Ukrainian people who live in Alberta. It'd be nice to go and see that part of the world.
I thought you were going to say we have a lot of Ukrainian people who listen to the show, in which case, thank you. But I don't know if
we could.
Have we? Have we had somebody from the Ukraine
yet?
Haven't seen that on our...
I haven't looked at the stats in a while.
On our metrics. I know we do have some countries over in Europe, but I haven't seen that one.
If you are Ukrainian or you know a Ukrainian person, feel free to share.
Yeah.
They could also, message us or leave a voicemail on our Anchor app and tell us about that festival or how April Fool's is celebrated there.
Yeah.
Neat.
Or tell us if everything we just read about the Ukraine is bogus.
Totally false. Yeah. April Fool's on you. It's also the start of Easter, right? With Holy Thursday today. So anybody who is celebrating Easter religiously,
yes,
happy holiday.
Well, that would be for our friends listening in the West, because doesn't like the Eastern Orthodox Church, they're on a different calendar, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, they celebrate slightly later.
Right, because they're more towards the end of April, I believe. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah.
Apologies, ironically enough, to people in the Ukraine who would probably know that.
Who may be Ukrainian Catholic, or I have friends who are Greek Catholic, so they also celebrate, they all in the Eastern Church celebrate slightly later.
Anyway, that's where we get into the differences of the calendar.
Yeah.
But what will not be different is this show today, as we have another smorgasbord of topics to discuss.
Yeah, oftentimes we can kind of find a common theme that threads us through, but other times not so much. History's wacky and wild and weird, and we're going to love it.
But we will find a way to weave all this through, because although April Fool's Day may not be a worldwide celebration, a very important group in the world is NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And Trish is going to tell us more about it.
I'm going to bring you up to speed on it. So North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also called the North Atlantic Alliance, is an intergovernmental military alliance between 30 European and North American countries. It's going to implement what's called the North Atlantic Treaty that's going to be signed on the 4th of April, 1949. So it's basically a collective defense organization where these 30 different countries all agree to help one another in terms of any situation where, they have to join together to maybe stop a specific power, or if there's, some sort of clash that goes on in the world that's very significant to these different countries, and they can all, call on one another for assistance. So since its founding, the admission of new member states has increased the alliance from the original 12, we started with 12, up to this most recent is 30. The most recent member state to be added to NATO was North Macedonia on the 27th of March, 2020. So just a new little baby last year.
Fairly recent. It sounds like the NHL. You've got like your original 12 instead of your original 6, and now you've expanded to 30.
It's neat how all these countries just, I don't know, work together. Because in your mind, you're thinking North Atlantic trade. So you think of just like something that's bordering the North Atlantic, but I guess it goes further. We've recognized Bosnia, Georgia, Ukraine as inspiring members. An additional 20 countries participate in NATO's Partnership for Peace program, with 15 other countries involved in institutionalized dialogue programs. So although it's like these 30, there's kind of fringe groups that work together. And
almost like they're affiliate members or something. They're not.
Yeah, like the Justice League with the Teen Titans, kind of like on the outskirts.
Right, that's what I was going to say. They're just not sitting at the cool kid table or something. Yeah.
The little kid table drinking the grape juice.
Yeah.
So March 4th, 1947, the Treaty of Dunkirk is signed by France and the United Kingdom as the Treaty of Alliance and Mutual Assistance in the event of a possible attack by Germany or the Soviet Union in the aftermath of World War II. In 48, this alliance is going to expand to then include other countries in the form of the Western Union, also referred to as the Brussels Treaty Organization, or BTO, established by the Treaty of Brussels. And that's going to bring us to this North Atlantic Treaty on April 4th, 49, and then it just gets changed to, the NATO that we know of. So kind of cool. There's certain things that are neat about it. The North Atlantic Treaty was largely dormant until the Korean War. So they established this organization. They're like, hey, let's all help each other out. And then it's like no one talks to each other for, the next couple of decades.
It sounds like when you're trying to plan a group party or something, and it's like, hey, let's
Yeah.
all do this. That sounds good. Okay, who wants to like organize this, and who wants to bring the chips, and who wants to bring the, and then nobody answers,
Yeah.
and then like
Britain's like, peace out, I'm done. You
Right?
guys solve it yourself.
And then like 2 days before the party, it's like, hey, who's bringing what?
Oh yeah, we have that thing. So the
Yeah.
Korean War was that thing that got everyone back together. And then Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, requiring member states to come to the aid of any member state subject to an armed attack, is invoked for the very first and only time after the September 11th attacks on the United States.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because at that point, nobody knew, especially in those early days after September 11th, there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's for the first time that we're seeing on our show, there's like a proactiveness. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
this is something we should prepare for. And luckily, I mean, it didn't have to be invoked until that fateful day, unfortunately.
Right.
But it was put in place just in case, and it did end up helping, right? The allies all came together to try and sort that whole event out.
Yeah.
Yay, proactiveness.
It brought the world together.
Yeah, and who
In a
knows
sense,
down the
yeah.
road when or what we'll ever have to use it for again.
Hopefully never, but it's good to know
Hopefully.
we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it brought us together. And something else that brings us together every 2 years, except for 2020, because, hashtag COVID,
Right.
is the Olympics. I know it's something you and I both love. I always tell anybody, whenever there's a year of an Olympics, those 2 weeks are like my favorite 2 weeks of that year. So like, we didn't have it last year. So I have to find some other period of time in 2020 that was good. And let's be
to
honest,
bring you joy.
my
Nothing
options
was.
were limited.
Tiger King.
Yeah, but see, that lasted for like a few days cumulatively, because
I'm trying to
I
think what
binge
else
watched that in the
happened.
weekend,
I did binge watch that in the weekend too. I'm trying to think what else was going on. Those first 2 weeks of quarantine were kind of fun, right?
was
It was
fun.
like, hey, we're going to paint windows, we're going to make bread, and we're going to watch Tiger King.
That was the thing. It was fun for a while because we thought, okay, this is going to last maybe like a month, 2 months.
Yeah.
And then as it drug on, then
It got less fun.
It got a lot less fun real fast.
It's a lot less fun. But yeah, as of, this recording, the Olympics in Japan are scheduled to go ahead. There have been discussions in the weeks leading up to it, whether or not they would proceed. But like I said, as of this morning, still planning on going ahead. And I know they're just not allowing foreigners into Japan. It's only the athletes and locals who can take in viewing the events.
Yeah, and you have to figure that here at some point, as we sit here at the beginning of April, the Olympics are scheduled to start in 3.5 months. So
right.
If they're not going to happen, the decision would have to be made pretty soon here, I would think. Like, you can't just wait till the week before and be like, hey, y'all, don't show up.
Right. Especially like you're supposed to have the relay of the torch, and you have to get the athletes to come in and go through now, I guess, their quarantine
when they get there. Right.
Climatize. They got to make a decision somewhat. It seems like they are reluctantly going ahead, that the people of Japan aren't super stellar or on board. But when I talk to it with my students, it's like, you have to weigh the economic stance, the safety stance, and the emotional, mental well-being that the Olympics bring to people. Because like you said, you and I get great joy out of it. It's something to look forward to. It's something exciting. It's something new to watch.
And that's something we need.
Pride in your country. Yeah.
Yeah. Badly in this world right now is kind of something positive like that to unite and inspire us. But it was a much different story back in the 1800s when the first modern Olympics,
April 6th, 1896 in Athens, when we have the opening of the first modern Olympic Games, is celebrated. 1,500 years after the original games are going to be banned by the Roman Emperor Theodosius the First.
He's just mad because he finished second. So he's like, no more Olympics, and I'm going to call myself the first. And
no gold for you.
Poop on him.
So I have some interesting facts about the first modern revived Olympics for you, Mike.
Okay.
It wasn't the first attempt at reviving the Olympics. So even after the Romans ended the game in 393 AD, I'm going to use CE, Common Era, the Olympic spirit endured. Informal Olympic festivals took place as early as the 1600s. And the 19th century brought a series of local revivals, including, I'm going to totally say this wrong, the Jeux Olympiques, Scandinavians in Sweden, and the Zappa's Olympics in Greece. In England, meanwhile, a doctor named William Penny Brooks started the annual Wenlock Olympic Games, which attracted athletes from around the country. So they have all these different countries having this movement. But it's all going to come together under a French baron named Pierre de Coubertin in the 1890s, who gathers enough support for an international Olympic competition to be held in a different city every 4 years. And we have the inaugural hosting in Athens.
Yay.
Yay! Now, most countries didn't actually send an Olympic team. So despite the best efforts of this French baron, the newly formed International Olympic Committee, the 1896 Games met with very little fanfare outside of Greece. So in Greece, great, people were really excited. But outside of Greece, it was like, meh, want. The U.S. team, for example, consisted of 13 college and amateur athletes who traveled to Athens on their own dime. Many other competitors were local Greeks or even just vacationers who chanced upon the contest and decided to sign up. They're just like, oh, hey. So the most famous of these accidental Olympians was a man by the name of John Prius Bolin, an Irishman who traveled to the games as a spectator and ended up participating after a friend registered him for the tennis competition. He scrounged up a racket and he went to the courts in his leather-soled shoes and went on to claim victory in both the singles and the doubles. just because, just by chance.
This is like you're just walking through. It's like, hey, we're having a pie eating contest. Okay, and then you just go in and win.
I like pie.
Right. Okay.
So how cool would that be to be related to that guy and be like, I don't know, we just got an Olympic medal just because.
That's pretty cool. I remember that being a thing back when because Atlanta had the Olympics in 1996. Those were the Centennial Olympic Games.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, some people who were a little upset because they had hoped that Athens would have gotten those games to honor the 100 years since they had the first modern games. Of course, as we know, Athens wound up getting the games in 2004, so they had to wait a little bit, but they did get them.
That would have been way cooler, though. Have it back in the original location.
Yeah, that would have been. Although that is the 2004 Athens Games is probably the only opening ceremony for an Olympics that I did not get to watch because I did not get to watch that one live because we were too busy getting hit with a dadgum hurricane that night.
Oh, of course.
And we didn't have power for 3 days.
Oh, you missed 3 days of Olympic coverage. That would be so sad.
Yes.
But luckily, all was well. You were okay. That's the
most important. It was.
Did you know that there was calls, though, to make Athens the permanent home of the Olympics?
I probably have read that, but no, I can't say that I know that for sure, though.
So they thought that it would be a perfect just to have it in one location at all times. And I know there's modern calls to do that now, right?
I get the idea of that, but it's such an event now. There's no way that you could do it.
It would be very difficult.
Right. And I don't think, unless you just got the right setup, I don't think there's a city that would want to deal with that every 4 years. Ugh. Because it's a ton of work for a city to put on an Olympic Games.
But also, I guess if you had like a permanent stadium or a permanent venue, then overall people would be saving money.
Maybe, but that's why they repurpose a lot of these facilities after the Olympics for other uses. Like, for example, going back to the Atlanta example, the Olympic stadium that they built to host like the track and field events and host the opening and closing ceremonies, they built that in mind knowing that it was going to become the Atlanta Braves baseball stadium after the Olympics. True. So when you go back and actually look at an aerial of Atlanta Olympic Stadium, you'll see one of the corners. It was more like an oval shaped stadium, but there's one of the corners that's kind of shaped differently because that's ultimately where home plate was going to go when it was converted to a baseball stadium. Yeah. Right. And
that makes sense.
And now that the Braves have moved to a new stadium, that stadium is now a football stadium for Georgia State.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's just smart planning. I think what's interesting though is this idea of keeping it in Athens. A lot of athletes actually supported the plan. The U.S. team actually issued a statement that said the game should, quote, never be removed from Greek soil. But the founder, our French baron, Pierre de Coubertin, would have none of it. He was desperate to make the Olympics an international competition. And he was really concerned that the cash-strapped Greek government wouldn't be capable of consistently hosting it. So he and his supporters eventually came up with this bizarre compromise that we, as modern Olympian watchers, don't really know or have known. But the compromise is, while the Summer Games would still move from city to city every 4 years, Greece was made the permanent host of a separate contest to be held in between each Olympiad. The first and only of these, what they called intercaled games, later took place in Athens in 1906, but political turmoil canceled the next 3 contests, and then they just abandoned the project.
I do like that the Olympic flame begins there when
Yes,
it goes
I do
on
love
its
that.
journey. I love that they kept that part alive.
Yeah. Winners didn't actually receive gold medals. That was not a thing in the first modern Olympics.
This I knew they got. I don't remember what they got though.
Winners at the 1896 games were presented with silver medals, certificates, and olive branches, while the runners-up received bronze medals and laurel branches. The unlucky third place finishers got nothing. So if you were third place, it was just bupkis.
Wow. So we don't even care. We just
Thanks
care
for
about
coming
first
out.
and second.
There was also no female competitors in the first modern Olympics.
I
So it
could
was
see
an
that.
all-male affair. It was basically because Pierre de Coubertin considered female participants in sports to be indecent.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean when I said I could see that. I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way. I'm just for that time. I could
Right.
see
Oh,
where
yes.
female athletics was not near
No.
what it is nowadays.
No. In the 1800s, no way. They weren't
Right.
letting women have any fun.
Yeah, things are certainly different now. I think don't women make up half or close to half of all of the Olympians now?
You are really close. According to 2016, 45% of Olympians in the Summer Games were women.
There you go.
It's slowly gone up every, like 2008, it was 42.4, 2012, it was 44.2, 2016, 45. So every Olympics, there tends to be more women getting involved.
Right, and there's multiple reasons for that. You do have more sports and more equal opportunities, and over, especially the last several Olympic cycles, they've added more sports to the roster. Like I know we're going to have BMX, biking, and baseball and softball are back in the Olympics this year in 2021. So yeah.
When I think as we go forward in human history too, there's also more countries that are allowing more women to participate more actively and all that. One last interesting tidbit I found about the first modern Olympics is there's an American athlete who won the discus, despite never having thrown a discus ever before in his life. So another one of these kind of accidental participants.
And he was one of the 12 that went over there on their own dime. So now this brings a very interesting question. If he'd never thrown a discus before, how did he wind up in this competition? And what was his original intent of going over there?
I believe he was involved with another sport, but discus wasn't a part of the American athletes in the late 1800s. So before leaving for Athens, this gentleman studied images of ancient Greek art and attempted to build a discus from scratch. So his prototype discus tipped the scales at 25 pounds.
Goodness.
Far heavier than the regulation weight of less than 5 pounds. So he had like a 25.
I could see how I was going to ask how terrible were these other competitors, but no, he trained with something 5 times the weight.
And all I could think about when I read this is like swimmers will train wearing like multiple swimsuits to increase the drag in the pool, and then when they finally strip down to just their single suit, they're way faster, right?
It's like when a baseball player is in the on-deck circle, he'll swing with like 2 bats, or he'll have a weight on his bat or something to more weights. That way when he gets out there and swings it, it's lighter and he's putting all that oomph to it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And
Right.
oomph is a technical scientific term.
And oomph is a, I'm glad you're just like teaching us all the things.
Yes, all of the things. And all of the
All of
things
the
will
things.
gather in Los Angeles in 2028. We may have won the first discus Olympic gold medal, and maybe we will win another one in 2028 when the Summer Games return to Los Angeles, where it'll be the third time that LA has hosted the games.
I did not know that.
They held them in 1932, I believe it was, and then 1984.
Let's buy our tickets already. Get ready.
Yes. Quarantine will be over by then, right?
Hopefully. I mean, I keep joking about 40 years time, but we'll see.
Something. But it was time in 1902 in Los Angeles. On April 2nd, it was time to go to the movies because the first full-time movie theater in the United States opened. The Electric Theater in Los Angeles became the first movie theater in California dedicated to showing motion pictures. The theater was originally open from 7:30 to 10:30 at night, but due to such high demand, the owner, Thomas Lincoln Talley, was forced to run matinees. Tickets were 10 cents and every showing would sell out.
Wow. Imagine how nice would it be to go to a movie. I know some people are heading to the movie theater already, but
Yeah, and we're getting there. I
be
think
nice.
it's some have gone but I think by the end of the year we're going to be back in movie theaters, hopefully. More of a I mean, we're technically back in movie theaters now, but I mean more on a
Right.
as we knew them previously. Although,
Yes.
you know,
Now, what did we find the inflation on that 10 cents? That sounds like a real good deal.
no, but I can look it up real quick. Or
I'm trying to track it down here quick.
see, but you got to remember, you got to do the exchange rate, and that's not going to end well for you. Hold on, I got you. So in 1902, okay, the my inflation calculator only goes back to 1913. So,
Oh, yeah.
but a 10-cent ticket would cost you $2.66 in
Hmm.
U.S. 2021 dollars.
That's still pretty good steal of a deal.
Yes, because I don't think you can get anything in a movie theater for $2.66.
If you just wanted like a little container of the butter, because isn't it like 10 cents extra to put like the extra butter on your popcorn?
I don't know how it works in the theater that I go to. You put your own butter on it. Like
Oh,
they've
okay.
got a little area, like you go to the soda fountain and you get your soda, and then there's a little dispenser where you just push the button and you get your own butter. So
Hmm.
at least at the theater I go to.
That's good.
So
I just remember back in the day when they charge you extra for butter or
I'm sure
flavoring
they
or something.
did. Yeah.
They charge you extra for everything.
Well, it's like you go to McDonald's or Burger King and you want like an extra barbecue sauce cup or something, and it's like 25 cents. It's like, come on.
I used
Like,
to have to do that when I worked at Dairy Queen. Be
it's
like, you
like,
wanted extra topping, you had to do an open order of something and charge you 25 cents.
I get that you got to have limits in place, but I mean, like say you get a 10-piece nugget. Okay, we can only give you 2 sauces. Well, what if I really want 3? I mean, are that many people really going to go through there and hose them on 3? It's like, no, I've got to pay an
No.
extra quarter. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Just, I need my sauce for my nugs.
Right. And if you didn't make them so dry, I wouldn't need a third cup.
Oh, no.
Just saying. Tell the last time I had some McNuggets, they weren't very good, and I'm not
You are
bitter
not
about it.
pleased. This goes back to our chicken discussion from 2 weeks ago.
Goes back to something. So, movie theaters, going back to that, speaking of going back to things, did you know? So, this was the first permanent, like, theater.
Right.
But prior to that, theaters were set up in converted storefronts, and they were just small, basic, kind of bare bones theaters. They were popular in like the late 1900s. So it was a little bit after this theater had opened, but these were more spread around throughout the country.
Mhm.
And they charged a nickel.
So you get a slightly cheaper experience, but also I'm assuming the seating's not quite as nice, right? Your screen's not permanent. It's just a storefront.
Right. It's more temporary kind of
Yeah.
thing. So they would charge a nickel, and these theaters were called Nickelodeons.
Oh, that's where we get the
Because
name.
Yes. So you had nickel because they
Yeah.
cost a nickel. And Odeon comes from the ancient Greek word of Odeon, which is a roofed over theater.
How interesting.
And
And like every 90s kid is like blowing their mind right now.
yes, because on April 1st, 1979, Nickelodeon was launched in the United States as a cable channel.
79 already.
Yes.
Oh, see, and I thought it was later, like late 80s, early 90s.
Nope. April 1st, 1979, although we can trace its origins back even further.
Do tell.
Because in the late 1970s, in 1977 to be exact, Cube, Qube,
Okay.
was one of the first early cable TV systems. And it was in Columbus, Ohio. And they had a channel that aired a show called Pinwheel that was an educational show. And it performed very well with subscribers. And so they felt that there was an opportunity to expand this nationally. So the channel wound up getting renamed Nickelodeon and launched to a U.S. audience on not all cable systems, but on a lot more cable systems on April 1st, 1979. And Pinwheel was the first program broadcast on the new channel.
Oh, to be aired. That's so
Yes.
cool. I like those little tidbits of info.
The channel remained without advertising until 1984.
There was no ads,
Mm-hmm.
like not even for their own toys.
No. Just no
Can you
ads.
imagine?
I
Those
know,
kids
right?
were so lucky. We got screwed over.
So Cube came to be because the chairman of Warner Communications at the time, Steve Ross, saw a closed circuit TV system at a hotel at the Otani Hotel in Tokyo while he was traveling. So, and as we learned last week about WrestleMania, we talked about how closed circuit TV was a thing. So he began to wonder what they could do to improve Warner's cable systems, or their cable television division. And he started thinking if there was some way we could create what we became known as cable boxes, if we could create some sort of a device that we could control what people see and everything. And so cable TV wound up becoming a thing. They got Pioneer Electronics to build these cable boxes, and they eventually started cable systems in different cities like Houston and Dallas and St. Louis and so on. And ultimately, Warner Communications wound up buying and taking over Cube, and they wound up starting operating at such a loss, because these startup costs were so extravagant. They just weren't making enough money, probably because they didn't have advertising.
Yeah, they probably should have clued in on that one.
That might have been helpful. So they actually went to American Express, who we learned about on a recent episode, how their company got started, and they were one of the investors in Warner Communications. So you had Warner Amex Satellite Entertainment that now owned the Nickelodeon channel, and since things were not going so well, they sold it off to Viacom in 1986, who
and
still
then they
owns
started
it
getting advertisements, and now they own it.
Yes.
That makes sense. There's some good shows. I was scrolling through thinking about all the Nickelodeon shows because we didn't get the Nickelodeon channel per se in Canada right away, but you could get access to some of the shows that Nickelodeon made.
Like they would farm them out to different Canadian
yeah, because
channels.
we had like YTV here in Canada, so like youth television, and they would farm them out. So like I grew up on Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Gotcha. Like that was a big Nickelodeon show.
Yeah. And now I'm just scrolling through it and it's like, oh yeah, like The Last Airbender is so good. Invader Zim, amazing. I know it's not one of the older shows, but
I was just gonna say.
Not one of the older shows. It's 20 years old, but it's held up.
I'm sure it has. So Nickelodeon started, in the late 80s, I think was really kind of the big boom that a lot of people saw as cable began expanding and, kids programming and stuff. So they had a lot of game shows, like, of course, Double Dare.
Yeah,
Legends of the Hidden
Dare was
Temple.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Did you ever see Nick Arcade?
Nope.
Have you ever heard of Nick Arcade?
Nope.
Oh, child, let me tell you,
what is that?
You're gonna have to go like pulling these up on YouTube or something so you can see this show. There are people listening to this who are freaking out because they remember how good the show was. So basically, like, they would you'd have two teams of two compete in, like, they'd ask a question and you'd have to move your video game character around a board.
Okay.
Think of it like a digital version of Monopoly.
Okay.
Like you're moving around the board and you've got to get to the goal. Well, you would occasionally come into these different challenges where you'd have to go over and play an arcade game, and there would be a task that you could do to earn bonus points. So
sounds like so much fun.
Like you have to get 50 rings in the first level of Sonic the Hedgehog in 30 seconds or something like that. And if you did it, you'd get bonus points. But at the end, the winning team at the end got to go and be inside a video game.
They got to be inside of a video game?
Yes.
Like they would put their likeness inside of a video game?
Okay, so as a kid, you don't know how all this works. All right. So I'm going to spoil the magic for you. But basically, these kids are running around in a room, in a green screen room, basically.
Oh, and so they would record it and then play it back, and you look like you're in your favorite game.
Well, no, like they had like these made up games that they'd have to, tasks that these kids would have to do. And so it's really mind boggling to think of how they pulled this off with early 90s technology. So these kids are basically like your weatherman on TV. So he's talking about this rain cloud over here coming in from the south. Well, this kid's looking at himself in a monitor and he's got to touch this part to grab this gem or whatever. And he's got to see that the enemy is throwing a lightning bolt at him. So he's got to know to duck and dodge it. And it was a really cool show. Yes.
You're like, you are real excited about this.
I wanted to go on the show really bad, but
that's awesome.
Yeah. And of course, Nickelodeon would then expand to Nicktoons. They started creating, do you know what the first Nicktoon was?
No, I've never heard of Nicktoons. I've heard of Nick at Night.
Okay, Nick at Night. That was the next thing on my list. We'll get to that in a second. So Nicktoons basically became Nickelodeon made in the early 90s. They made a concerted effort to start having more animated shows. And so the first Nicktoon was Doug.
I love Doug. So such a good show.
They started a Sunday night cartoon block called Nicktoons. The first three shows were Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy.
All are three excellent shows.
And then over time, Nickelodeon eventually invested more into producing their own content and built their own Nickelodeon animation studio, and produced a lot of their own shows.
That's so funny. Mind you, when you think back on so Doug, great, love it. Rugrats, also great, totally makes sense. Very kind of wholesome, right?
Yeah.
Ren and Stimpy was like, what the hell happened there?
We could probably do a whole episode on Ren and Stimpy.
Oh my goodness, we could.
There is some history there. There was a lot of creative disputes over the content of
I don't know this.
Show.
I grew up, obviously I was younger. My brothers would watch it, and I don't know if my mom actually really wanted me to watch it, but with older brothers, that's just what happens. You end up watching things you're not supposed to. Yeah.
As we learned in a couple weeks ago when you referred to, was it The Simpsons?
The Simpsons I wasn't really supposed to watch. And in Canada, we had a show called Degrassi Junior High.
So I've heard of Degrassi.
Not supposed to watch Degrassi. Now everyone seems to know the modern Degrassi because Drake was on it before he became the rapper. It was another show my mother was like, you shouldn't really be watching this. I remember not being allowed to watch it until I was in middle school. But The Simpsons, I watched it because my brothers were older and it was on Sunday. So that's what we watched.
There you go. Yep. Sunday nights. Yep. That's when Simpsons, and still is on to this day, 32 years later.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's crazy. So Nick at Night was another segment time. Bleh. So Nick at Night was another block of programming on Nickelodeon, would air, you guessed it, at night, and would feature older sitcoms and shows. So I remember in the 90s, they would show things like The Donna Reed Show or Mr. Ed. And then over the next 10, 15 years, they would kind of work on a 20 to 30 year cycle of shows. So then they moved on to showing like Home Improvement or The Cosby Show or something. And nowadays they show like Friends and The
Just
Fresh
so
Prince of Bel-Air,
random.
which I'm like, wait a minute. I remember watching these shows when they're on. They're not old
You're
enough
like,
to be on Nick at Night.
I'm old now. I mean, what is it? There's people that go around and they're like, the 80s is undeniably 20 years ago. It will always be 20 years ago. Like,
Pretty much.
and really, it's like, oh man,
It's really 30 years ago now, but we're
yeah,
not going there.
we're not going to talk about that.
No. So what was your favorite Nickelodeon show? I guess you probably said like
I mean, I really
like the
liked Doug.
cartoons.
Yeah, I like the cartoons. I really like Doug. I really like was totally tickled by Invader Zim when it came out. Like I was in grade 10, I think 2001,
Okay.
and we would all just hang out at my friend Jono's house and watch it and just it's too I don't know. I'm easily amused apparently and I would just giggle.
So fun story about Nickelodeon, and you said you have a friend named Jono. I have a friend named
Yeah.
Jono. Well, okay, his name's John, but we call him Jono.
Yeah.
And so when we were, I think like 8 years old. His family was on Family Double Dare,
Oh, cool.
but you had to be 10 to be on the show.
Oh, so they didn't let him?
So he didn't get to play. So they had one of his cousins fill in as like the fourth family member. So it was like his mom, his dad, and his older sister.
That's awful. Poor John.
Flash forward to a couple of years ago when they brought Double Dare back on Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking for families to apply. So Jono applied and they told them the story and everything. And the producers loved the idea of
him getting like a redemption.
Getting a redemption.
That's fantastic. Did he get picked?
And so, yeah, him and his sister
Mm-hmm.
paired up with two of their cousins because Jono's kid is way too young to be on the show at the time. Well, he still is too young. But so Jono and his sister, and they had two of their cousins. They flew out to California and they were on the show, and he got to meet Mark Summers, who they had brought back
nice.
for the revival, and it was a good deal.
That's cool. I really like that.
Yeah.
Did they win though?
They won, but they didn't like complete the full obstacle course. So, but
hey, a win's a win.
Yeah. Hey, it took him a long time, but he finally got on Double Dare. So, yeah, that was probably one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, that's a good one. I did like the obstacle course stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey Dude was another one of my favorite shows. You probably have never seen that one.
No, Hey Dude. No.
It ran for a few seasons. It was like about a group of teenager-ish, like 16 to 20-year-old type kids that worked at a dude ranch. Like a Western dude ranch for the summer kind of thing, and the shenanigans that they would get into.
Sounds like a very interesting dilemma, running this dude ranch or working on the dude ranch.
And it was.
And then you wonder, like, what are our kids going to remember when they're older and reflect back? And like, they're not going to understand the awfulness of waiting through commercials or the mad scramble to go get your snack during a commercial. You're like, holy shit, I got like 30 seconds. I got to get to the kitchen and back.
Yeah. Like, you do not know the terror of having somebody holler, "It's back on."
Yeah.
And like, you've got to run back because, kids, there did not used to be DVRs and stuff. Maybe you were recording something on tape.
You call them DVRs?
That's kind of digital video recorder. I guess you call them PVRs.
We have PVRs.
And what was the P for?
It's like personal.
Okay. Yeah, that's just
so interesting.
Yeah. You were saying we can't even agree on one letter. That's great. And we share how much of a border with y'all?
True.
But I mean, because like you could record something on a VHS tape, but you couldn't watch it back until the show was over. Like that would be a thing. So like,
you had to really hope you did everything correctly so that it actually recorded what you wanted.
Yeah. Do you remember VCR Plus?
No, what's VCR Plus?
This maybe was never a thing in Canada. So VCR Plus was a like early mid 90s, like 93, 94-ish technology where instead of having to set a recording, so gosh, it occurs to me there may be people listening to this that don't know what I'm talking about. You had to program your VCR So you'd have to tell the VCR what channel to record, what time to start
Mhm.
recording, and what time to stop recording.
I do remember this. Yeah.
And you'd have to tell it what speed to record on.
Oh,
Because,
you had to pick speed?
yes,
Oh, I don't remember anything about the speed.
I'm assuming it was this way in Canada. Okay. So you had SP, LP, and EP.
Oh, I do remember those letters. I had no idea what they did.
Okay. So basically, it would depend on the speed of the tape. So, and of course, you had to make sure you had the right tape. So let's just say in the best case scenario here, you have an EP 6-hour tape.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So if you set it on SP, it's going to record 2 hours over the span of that tape.
Right.
So like it's going to spin the tape faster. So it's going to record more data from the thing, and you're going to wind up with a better quality version.
Recording of it. Yeah.
Right. So like
Okay.
a lot of your movies released, like your commercially released VHS tapes, a lot
Right.
of them are going to be SP.
So think about it, children who have not grown up with tapes, about picking the quality of your YouTube channel and the amount of time of buffering.
Yeah, that's kind of
Similar.
what this would be. Right. You're pick the clarity, you know, are you watching this in 480? Are you watching this in 720? That gives you somewhat of an idea of kind of what this would be like. But most people you'd want to record on EP because then you're going to get the most on the tape. So
Yes,
if you had a 6-hour
maximize your tape,
you can record for 6 hours if you set it on EP. Now the quality is not going to be quite as great, but it was still very watchable.
I don't think I even comprehended that was a function of the VCR.
Okay, so that was what you had to do if you wanted to record. Now, and of course, you had to make sure you had a tape in the machine, of course, and you had to make sure that the little tab hadn't been pulled off. Because if that was the case, you had to make sure you taped over it, and that would the whole purpose of pulling the tab off was so you wouldn't record over something that you didn't want to record on. Anyway, back to VCR Plus. So VCR Plus was this new system to where, and like if you looked in TV Guide, and TV Guide, for those of you who are not knowing what I'm talking about, was a book that you would buy at the grocery store every week, or that would have the TV listings. So like, you know, you pull up your guide on your cable box or your satellite or whatever now, and you see, oh, channel 3 has whatever on at 8:00. Well, those weren't a thing really at the time. They were starting to become a thing, but you'd have to buy a TV Guide so you know what was on what channel. And so they started listing VCR Plus codes. So like you'd have this batch of VCRs that if you put in, I'm just going to make up a number because I don't remember, you know. So if you wanted to watch, let's just say they were showing Ghostbusters on ABC at 8:00 on Saturday night. Okay. You'd either have to set your VCR 8:00, channel 9, you know, SP, whatever. Okay. So, or there'd be a VCR Plus code, 34719. All right. So
and it would automatically set up everything for you?
And you would just go to, if your VCR had the VCR Plus function, you would just punch in that code, and it was pre-programmed to record on channel 9 from 8 to 10, or, you know,
for
whatever.
Right. Wow.
Like the VCR doesn't know it's Ghostbusters. It just knows
this channel this time.
This specific code tells me to record this channel this time. Yeah.
What? I do not. If this was a thing in Canada, I did not know about it. But that sounds amazing, because programming the VCR was the most stressful thing ever. Just to make sure you got your it was frustrating and stressful. Next to, we used to have the TV Guide that would rotate.
Yeah.
And then if you miss the rotation, you're like, I gotta wait.
Yep.
Find out again. You have to sit there staring at the screen.
And so for the kids listening at home that don't know what we're talking about, imagine scrolling through your channel guide on your cable box or your satellite. Well, you didn't have that on your thing. So there was this dedicated channel that you could go to that would basically do that, and it would scroll through. And as Trish said, if say you wanted to see what was on, channel 4, well, and you got to it, they were already showing channel 5, 6, 7, and 8. You had to wait until it scrolled through back around. And
then if you wanted to see it for 10 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock, you had to sit and wait and scroll through.
Yeah. So
fun times. How did we ever make it to 2021 with, movies on demand and Netflix and zero commercials. And
I don't know, but I'm glad we did.
yeah, now my students are all grumpy at me because when I show them YouTube videos, of course I still have ads. They're like, just get like YouTube Premium. I'm like, why am I going to get YouTube Premium? I can just wait the 10 seconds and skip the ad. Like,
if you want me to get YouTube Premium, start passing the hat around, kid.
Yeah, it's like, seriously, you guys don't remember like 3-minute commercials. 10 seconds is nothing for me.
Do you remember on DVDs unskippable ads at the beginning whenever you would put a DVD in to load? Mm-hmm. It's like, I get it, but those were annoying because I don't want to have to watch this every time I want to watch this movie.
Well, and I didn't think it was very fair because you had already bought the DVD. Like, you had paid for it. They got money for that ad already.
Like, that's where I wouldn't have as big a problem if you had rental copies that didn't let you skip them. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I could kind of see that. But, of course, then if you buy an old rental copy, then that becomes
You're stuck with that.
Right. But at least, like, a lot of the movies I had, you could skip, which was nice. But still, it would take a few minutes, you know. Like, whereas on a VHS, you could always fast forward through them.
Yeah.
Before a movie. I mean, it wasn't anything new. It was just, no, we're going to make you watch this. It's like, I don't want to. It's so aggravating.
Too bad.
Have you seen on Netflix the last Blockbuster?
No, it's the documentary though, right?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things.
I watched it last weekend. It was pretty good. So it's basically about the last Blockbuster that's left. It's up in Bend, Oregon. And they still rent out DVDs and Blu-rays and video games and everything. And they even stayed open during COVID. They went to it was neat. They don't cover that part in the movie. I subsequently have found this out through doing some research. So, like, you could call the store and, you know, tell us what you want, and we'll have it, you know, cleaned and sanitized and bagged up and ready for you to come by and get.
Oh, we should. That's another bucket list.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Go. Bend to Oregon. Let's do it.
Never wanted to go to Oregon more in my life.
Yeah. Oregon's a beautiful part of the United States. Like, there's some really nice...
I want to take that drive down along the West Coast.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Like, start in Vancouver and go all the way down.
Yeah. But there wasn't something specifically in Oregon to go for. But now
there is.
Now there is.
I legit do want to go there and rent a tape, or we'll rent a VHS. Just say VHS.
Yeah, tape. You did.
Go rent a DVD or a Blu-ray. Like, I don't care. I just want to walk in there. I just want to walk that aisle.
Have that feeling.
I want to get a Blockbuster card. They have a website. I think it's the last Blockbuster.com or BlockbusterBendOregon.com. If you throw it in your Google machine, you'll find the website for them. But you can actually order. It's like $2. You can order a Blockbuster card, like a commemorative one. Like, they'll print one out and they'll laminate it and mail it to you. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
But I want to walk in there.
All the nostalgia feels.
Yeah, like I want to walk in there and rent something, and I'd want to just walk right outside and put it in the return slot. Like, hey, I've done my good deed. I've contributed to your.
Were you kind and rewinded?
I did. It took a while when DVDs became a thing. Like, when I got a DVD player for Christmas one year, and my grandpa would sometimes usually return my movies or whatever, like going to work or something. And he would, like, the first few times when I would have DVDs, he's like, "Did you rewind these?" And I'm like,
like, "Yes, Grandpa. Yeah, I did."
Like, it took him a little while to get that you don't have to rewind these. But
to get the true experience, you'd have to go into that Blockbuster with like 3 or 4 other friends.
Yes.
After having gone to the grocery store to get your snacks, and then spend the next half an hour, if not longer, debating about which DVD to rent and hating all the options.
The Blockbuster I grew up going to had a Pizza Hut next to it. So we would go into Pizza Hut, order a pizza, walk next door to Blockbuster, get our movies, go back next door to Pizza. Like, it was all in the same parking lot, so you didn't have to, like, keep moving your car. You just walk next door to Pizza Hut, pick up your pizza, go home, and make it a Blockbuster night. Yeah, fun times.
Nice.
Yep.
Speaking of time.
Yeah, we are out of time. So be kind and rewind, please. And if you didn't make it to the end of the episode, well, I hope somebody got you real good with an April Fool's prank. But
you made it.
But you made it. So
no pranks on you.
No pranks for you, and your tapes are rewound.
Nice.
Yeah.
You can always reach us at our Instagram page, Time Machine with Trish and Mike, our email, the Time Machine with Trish and Mike at gmail.com. And if you put it into your lovely little Google machine with YouTube, you can also find us there.
Yes, you can. And I think that covers all our social. And Anchor, if you have the Anchor app, you can find our show on there and leave us a message. And
can leave us any questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts.
Yes, thank you for that, Trish. And with that being said, we will catch you next time right here on The Time Machine.